Hey there, welcome to the Bible in 5. This week you're going to be reading Paul's first and second letters to the Thessalonians, i.e. the Christians living in the city of Thessalonica. And these two letters, they're both pretty short. They're Paul's earliest letters. They were written in probably like the late 40s of the first century. So in other words, these are actually the earliest, oldest Christian writings in existence that we have. They're Paul's first writings and the earliest writings in the New Testament. And essentially what Paul did, like most of the other letters he wrote, he personally went and lived in Thessalonica and preached the gospel, shared about Jesus with people, and a number of people came to faith. We're told in the book of Acts that lots of people believed in the message of the gospel. And so right from the beginning, however, Paul had to leave the city prematurely because there were a bunch of people in the city who heard about what Paul was doing, and they began to persecute him. They ran him out of town, and there were riots because they didn't like the message about Jesus that Paul was sharing. And so persecution was a reality for Paul and the Thessalonians right from the beginning of their Christian experience. And so Paul writes these letters. He had to leave the church early before he even got to know them very well. So he writes these letters to encourage the Thessalonians in their faith, but also to answer questions and address problems that are written in the church. So both letters deal with the reality of persecution. There are a number of people in the church who are wondering, like, is something wrong that people hate us because we're Christians, that we suffer hardship? And Paul has to help them understand that, no, you should expect that. Being a Christ follower is not easy. It might actually make life more difficult for you. And so you should put your hope and your confidence in Christ, not in your circumstances, because your circumstances might be very difficult. And so a big theme of how he gives them hope is to focus on the return of Jesus. In 1 Thessalonians, he talks about the return of Jesus in every single chapter. It was clearly an important part of their faith and their hope. And he unpacks the significance of the second coming, of the return of Jesus, for daily life as a Christ follower. And as you read through the letter, he focuses on a number of things that the return of Jesus should inspire. It should inspire hope in the midst of difficult circumstances. Things won't always be like this. It should inspire confidence. Especially in 2 Thessalonians, it comes to the surface that a bunch of people were talking about the return of Jesus and speculating about when it would happen and trying to instill fear or trying somehow, for some people, the return of Jesus would make them scared. And so Paul's like, what? Why are you speculating and just making up all of this foolishness? He reminds them of the core teaching about what happens at the return of Jesus, when it's going to happen, which nobody knows. He just says it will be preceded by a time of great persecution and trial and difficulty, which is why we should have hope in his return. And he says ultimately it should inspire confidence, not speculation, not weird timetables, not people trying to predict when it's going to happen. It should give us confidence, not speculation. And finally, the return of Jesus should inspire holiness. So these were brand new Christians. They were still putting together that how they live and the moral decisions they make should be consistent with the gospel, right? That's a learning process that we all have to go through. And so he says the return of Jesus should inspire holiness. Because the fact is that every one of us is going to have to stand before Jesus and give an account of our decisions and our lives. And so knowing that Jesus is going to return should inspire holiness and moral purity among Jesus' followers. That's a big theme. And then last, in both letters, he addresses this issue of laziness. And this may seem kind of weird, but there were a bunch of Christians in the church in Thessalonica who had stopped working. And they had started kind of essentially just borrowing from people in the church and couch surfing or whatever we might say in our culture here today. And many people think that it was connected to the fact that they thought Jesus was going to return tomorrow because of what these teachers were saying. And so why work? Why do anything? Like, why brush your teeth? You know what I mean? Like, Jesus is returning. And so a bunch of people had given up working and being productive citizens in the community. And Paul says, that's wrong. Like, we don't know when Jesus is going to return. You can't predict it. And becoming a follower of Jesus shouldn't make you lazy. It should actually make you work harder because you have hope and confidence that Jesus is going to come back. You have hope and confidence that he's going to set all things right in the world. And so he says, we should actually be the hardest working, most peaceable, people in our communities out of all, because we have hope and confidence that Jesus will return and set right all of the things that we're trying to do. And so he addresses this issue of laziness in both letters. It's kind of interesting. So that's Paul's letters to the Thessalonians. These passages about the return of Jesus are some of the clearest, most powerful teaching on the future Christian hope that we have as followers of Jesus, and how that should affect our daily life experience. So it's very powerful. They're cool letters, and I hope you enjoy reading them. We'll see you next time.